bureaucrats sometimes are not trained to do project management. Private sector does project management.
100%.
But if you rely on the state to build, then you must create the capacity for project management. Must keep capacity for value chain.
Talk to me about some of the financial institutions that are currently involved in driving this project. Okay, great stuff. Ambassador Jerry Matjila right here at the Johannesburg Business School. As I said earlier on, this is a critical event that, of course, involves a lot of African countries in the continent. And joining me is Ambassador Jerry, who's just going to be answering a couple of questions that I'm going to be throwing, of course, as a follow-up to the panel discussion that we just had right now. Ambassador, thank you so much. Just a follow-up question, especially on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, right? How far are we, according to your knowledge, according to the knowledge that you have dealing with a number of organizations and institutions that are involved in driving this project? How far are we?
Greeting to you and your viewers. I think we have moved because we have adopted the guidelines, the protocols, the framework of the trade union trade movement itself. Now we have an institution in Ghana, a secretariat in Ghana, a secretary general who come from South Africa. So I think we have everything in place now. So what we have seen in the last 2 years was to look into the systems and identify those areas that needs a lot of improvements, a lot of dynamism, a lot of reformulation to make sure that this trade arrangement moves. Secondly, to look into the kind of products that can be, move easily between in Africa.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at the infrastructure. Do we have an infrastructure that can facilitate the movement of goods and services in Africa, from city to city, from country to country, trans-Africa relationship? So I think we're moving in the stage now where, if I listen the other time, to say now we have identified the issues, what are you doing is these solutions. What is the financing, technology, who manage what infrastructure? And then is the inputs, electricity, water, roads, telecommunications. So I think there is a lot of things going on. By the way, we are still within the first 10 years of implementation of the African Free Trade arrangements. And then I see various sub-regions like SADC, East Africa, Central Africa, ECOWAS, that are now looking closer as neighbors. What is it that we can do to fast-track the larger continental arrangements? So that's why you see all the sub-regions are adopting something like a free trade arrangements among themselves, because then they will contribute to the larger freight arrangements. I think we are on course.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I'm asking this question because 2023 is, deemed as a year of, accelerating the Africa Continental Free Trade Area amongst, the African countries as well. But you speak about infrastructure, you speak about, as part of the solutions as well. Let's talk about the financing part of it. I mean, there's institutions such as the Afrexim Bank that is at the forefront of actually offering themselves to actually assist in terms of, pushing and driving this Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Talk to me about some of the financial institutions that are currently involved in driving this project.
It's a bouquet, it's a number of them. Yeah. Remember, at some stage, we as African, we started our own institution where the South African institution, pension fund, the PIC, put a lot of money into this, together with Ghana. It was the first fund that was created over close to $600 billion to say this fund can power, even before we have the African Free Continental Trade arrangements. So I see that's happening. Now we also see a bit of funds coming from China, where they're doing a bit of infrastructure, of course, on bilateral basis. We see a bit of funds from the African Development Bank itself, where they're looking to energy, roads, rail. And then our own Development Bank of Southern Africa, DBSA, is busy in a number of African countries financing a number of projects in this. So there is also then an arrangement that maybe we need to bring in funds from global organizations like the IMF, World Bank, like the European Development Bank. You know, it's quite a number of them. I think the challenge we have is to make sure that we don't duplicate this financing. Secondly, to zero into those infrastructure that will make a difference and then can unlock the potential. In our region, we're looking more on rail and road. If you look into Southern Africa, you see a lot of trans-country road network. If you today you drive from here into Zimbabwe, you go to Zambia. You drive today from here, you go to Lesotho, Swaziland, you go to Angola via Namibia. There is a lot of road infrastructure going on. And then we're looking into the a number of airports where we can serve as a hub to ensure that we can be on time and flowing. Then other people say, no man, let's look into the harbors, the sea. Let's look at the sea, you know, where a lot of global trade goes. So you see a number of countries are revamping their harbors to do that. So you need a variety of infrastructure to deal with this issue. But the backlog is huge.
Yeah, I mean the backlog is one of the things that is a big challenge, right? But let's talk about last, obviously, but not least. Let's talk about the leadership challenges. We know, I mean, Africa's number one problem is corruption, monopoly, and all those and all sorts of things like that, right? How are we making sure that we can mitigate such things, and we make sure that we implement strategies that will be able to prevent this Africa continental free trade area being hijacked by monopoly and corruption as well?
You know, I think the Africans are going through a lot of rethinking, reviewing. In South Africa, part of our process is because we have a very strong private sector in construction, in financing, banking, telecommunications. It's not the case in the rest of Africa. They still have a very underdeveloped private sector. So they rely more on the state as the engine for development. In South Africa, the state facilitates private sector participation and development. That is a major challenge. Secondly, in South Africa, we build our infrastructure mostly from our own companies. In Africa, they will get companies from outside. So it doubled the cost of building because it's in foreign currency. You have to be expatriates. So we have been saying, let's build the African private sector as an engine of economic development, because government cannot create all the jobs. Secondly, let's deal with the governance questions. We deal with the governance questions, then you are going to deal with the issues like money going this way, corruption. Then you are going to deal with the issues of unaccountability of state funds. Then you are going to deal with the issue of capacity, because bureaucrats sometimes are not trained to do project management. Private sector does project management.
100%.
But if you rely on the state to build, then you must create the capacity for project management. Must create capacity for value chain, capacity for accountability systems. So governments in Africa does everything. And the bureaucrats are not trained for everything in the continent. So we are then forced to outsource mostly to foreign countries. So I think part of building the continental free trade arrangement is to make sure that we have the capacity and the skills of project management, value addition, beneficiation, infrastructure development. We don't have enough skills to manage huge projects in the continent. So if you don't do that, then you are going to begin to create holes for people to undermine it. So I think part of the education of our young people, to me, are in 3 areas: project management of mega projects, supply chain development, and the issue of assessment, skills to construct, to infrastructure, the architecture, maintenance. Because we do have infrastructure, Africa, we build it, but we don't maintain it. So you build it 10 years, you go back there, that road is like it has never been before. There is no maintenance. So I think that's why we need capable team of project managers in the continent. We need homegrown. Our young people must be trained in project management of huge projects, in aftercare of project. They need to be maintained. You don't just build, they might be maintained. So we don't, as many governments, we don't budget maintenance. We budget constructions, but there is no maintenance thereafter. That's why you see the infrastructure slides and slides and slides and slides. It creates a big problem in terms of sustainability of the project.
Right. Ambassador Jerry, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.
Thanks
and
so much.
that is it. Thank you so much.